And so I'm Angela Giron, and I represent Pueblo County, so it's a nice district that's in one county, and there is so many comparisons to Denver, but it was great that I grew up, raised my own daughter there, and I love the community that I live with, which is about 44% Latino in that Senate district, but our main school district is about 60% Latino. And you know, when I think about Latinos in general and what our issues are, they're the same as everybody else's issues, except we're disproportionately affected by things like poverty. And right now, I mean, and some of that goes into the foreclosure that's putting us into poverty. You know, the low levels of education and criminalization of, I think, people of color. And so this year, carrying some bills that I think are specific to that. One that we're talking about right now is loan modification, is exactly that. So I probably have a little bit of a different perspective than Tim does. And, you know, I had written foreclosure down right away because I thought, well, you know, and maybe that's because I'm not very business oriented at all, thinking about how do we take advantage of communities to help rebuild them. All I'm thinking is families being pulled out of their homes, and how do we prevent that when I think that banks, in a lot of cases from the stories that we've heard, have not done their job and have contributed to this greatly. Yeah, are there people who probably are in homes that they can't afford? Yes. And maybe there's nothing a foreclosure bill or a loan modification is going to help them. But I think that the way that the industry, with the deregulation, allowed this to happen, and they were making hand over fist in money and selling off those loans, and they didn't have the responsibility of knowing that they were going to get that money paid back, so they were giving them to people probably who shouldn't get them, or trying to get them to get more. I mean, when I went in for my loan about 8 or 9 years ago, they said, oh, you get this and this. I was okay, no, we just want this, you know.
See, I'm not asking for something free.
Right, and that's...
I worked all my life. I'm 65 years old. I'm retired because I had a heart attack, not because I wanted to retire.
Well, so you seem like someone who would be really good for a loan modification when your situation has changed, but you still have some money coming in, and you could stay in your home. To me, you are the candidate that we're looking for to try to help. So I do have a loan modification, which it's quite a complicated business, and Tim probably knows that, and trying to, at the Capitol, which I don't know if at all Irene started out by talking, or in previous town halls, the money that's there in representing banks. And I mean, basically, I'm not sure, I don't think my bill's going to go through when I have the big banks and mortgage lenders hiring people and, you know, pouncing on that. And so I do have some, I'm going to still do the bill. I don't believe it will get through, but what I do have commitment from community banks and credit unions to really work on some things this summer to be able to help. But I have learned some things, and so I really do want to take your name. And I think when you have some, people who, I mean, and everyone should have their senator have to call, you know, or somebody who has a name. That's not how our country should be working. But we will do that because I'm right here, and I want to do. And actually, I want to introduce Michelle Horn. She's my chief of staff. She's my everything in our office. And so we've been working a lot on that together. And so we will, I mean, maybe because of the name that we have, or people call me back, and they just never call me back. I just tell them I'm a senator, and they call me back. Such an odd thing. But let us try to help you, because it is trying to navigate that. And what I have also, some of the stories that I've heard, that it's systematic in not trying to get back to people. It's not, and I'm sure people are tired, and there's people who are really working hard to try to do right by people, but there are systems in place so that they don't get back to people. So they say, well, I don't have this piece, this document, and you go, well, no, I sent it. Then you resend it, and then they lose something else. Well, then you're like, wow, they're sure losing a lot. Maybe it's just because there are a lot of people, or is it systematic in saying and just pulling you along? And so that was the kind of things that we were trying to address in the bill, that there were some very specific timelines and But I mean, the people went crazy, and like I said, it's a complicated system. And, you know, and I'm trying to understand the industry's perspective, but what I know is all the stories, the horror stories that I've heard, where it seems like it could be a win-win situation when we could keep someone in their home. And what I want to always motivate other people who aren't in foreclosure because of the numbers you just gave. I mean, I have a lot of foreclosures in my neighborhood. Pueblo had one of the second highest. We continued to go up when other counties were going down. Us and I think Grand Junction. We're the only two counties that continue to go up in foreclosures. So we had a great number of foreclosures. So a lot of people in my neighborhood, I said, well, just because you're not, if your house is going down, and I know the evaluation on my house has continued to go down, so we all have to be concerned about it. It's just not people who are in that situation. So, yes, I would love to be able to see what I can do to try to navigate that and use our name and our situation to be able to get you some help and assistance.
Yes, and I will have to say, there is not a word she said that I don't agree with. Having been on the inside and watched what happened, it was a travesty. And it becomes very easy to, for the banks, frankly, just to be honest on foreclosures, they run it actually through a computer. It's a computer-generated model that decides who they're actually just going to foreclose on, even though you may have deals that are set. The timelines are set for responses, looking for certain things. It's all automated, and a human being never actually looks at those. That's where the counselors come in, or with an elected official, unfortunately. You're absolutely right. You should not have to be an elected official to get that response, but that's how the system is designed. That is systemic, but there are ways to work through it. So, I'm sorry, you were starting to ask a question.
Yes.
No, it's with the area agency, an agency.
We, as a commission for the Denver Commission on Aging, what we chose as objectives for the year 2012 were based on what the 311 hotline requests were, especially from seniors. Number one was foreclosure. Number two was living and aging in place. And number three was Medicare and Medicaid. So the first objective of the outreach committee was to take a look at what was supposed to be out there for seniors to call. If you look at the city county of Denver, they list the hotline, they list brothers, and a couple other people that he mentioned. We had a total of 7 people that had gone through the entire list and got 0. Okay? So decided, well, we can't stop there. Let's go talk to State Attorney General. We went and talked to the State Attorney General. His office didn't have time because he didn't have enough staff. But he did give us a list of the 5 banks that are going to get the federal funding dollars, which was the $87 billion, okay, that they gave across the country. And those banks, and what is going on at this point in time is the State Attorney General's office said, okay, the voting closed last Thursday. They had 4 programs and they were going to vote. This is what we're going to do with the funds. But none of it truly addressed what the issues are. Currently, there is a group that is called the Mayor's Task Force on Housing to try and decide how to tackle the very issues that he's talking about. Okay. I don't know whether I can help you, but I do have the name of the guy that's responsible for lending all the money for the bank that you're working through. I'll give him a call tomorrow. If you like, I'll give you a follow-up call and we'll see what we can get done.
So you have someone very specific that Wells Fargo?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's I was going to call a friend of Lucia's who works still at Wells Fargo, Juanita. Whatever different things, because that was my first thought, get to that particular bank to navigate.
This is the thing that's so disheartening in working with seniors. You walk in and you sit down at somebody's kitchen table. That's the important. They have spent every dime in their life to get to the age that he is, to retire and live comfortably. His income stays the same, but the expenses go like this. And they're trying to make that work. And for him to go through everything that he's gone through to try and get answers is absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
Because I've been to them places 2 or 3 times, and they didn't do anything for me. They more or less said, hey, we don't want to be bothered with you, just,
I'm going to give you my private record calls too, because if you've got probably somebody who's local, probably the state president, that doesn't work. I know the guy that does the whole show, Wells in particular, and he'll do it, but I just, we shouldn't have to be there. We shouldn't have to be there.
And there is the Attorney General's office that is supposed to be addressing this gentleman's issue, because Wells Fargo is there. Because you have gone through, now, how many years? You're saying 4 years now? This is exactly what this is addressing, and I'm sorry that you did work for Wells Fargo. I myself have been in real estate for 15 years. I get this, I know what's going on, and he has done every step of he's done everything, and this is the fraudulent activity. I'm not saying that people he dealt with at Wells, but we do have confirmation that this has all been fraudulent. They are not working with these people, and this is what this is to combat. And whatever you can do to help this gentleman, here we have the proof right here. He's trying to do everything by the letter of the law, everything he is being told to do, and all he wants to do is stay in his home. Is it going to benefit Wells Fargo to put him out on the street
They have
and
our
be
bailout.
one more vacant home? I beg your pardon?
They have our bailout.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So, no, but again, he is supposed to be getting these monies from the Attorney General's office.
see, and I've been in the forbearance plan before, where you pay so much.
Right.
So like I said, this has been going on for 4 years.
No, he's done everything he is supposed to.
So were you
do.
able
This
to
is-
maintain the forbearance plan?
Pardon me?
Were you able to maintain the forbearance plan?
I done what they wanted.
Then it should have been automatically converted. Under HARP, you had a period of time where you maintained the forbearance plan and then it automatically converted. And so, again, this is not something that people go through very often. They don't understand it. I think, I actually talked with us, maybe I should be a housing counselor. Because I know the inside and I know how to get through.
Maybe I should be one as many as long as I
I want to be a little bit rude and interrupt this because I see that my other guest is
One
going to
voice.
leave. I'm so sorry. I have here Andrea Mareda, and I wanted to give her 5 minutes. You want to tell us up for 5 minutes? Sweetheart.
Sure.
What's on the top of your head?
I'm not even running, so I mean, I've got the elevator speech. Well, my name is Andrea Merida. How many of you actually live here in Southwest Denver? You do, you're beautiful. So, I'm your school board member. And we're here to talk about Latino issues. And I think probably the biggest issue that we have in Southwest Denver is the fact that, well, we have to be very vigilant about what happens to our students who are still English language learners. Southwest Denver, this district too, 41% of all of our kids are English language learners. And it just so happens that they also live in high poverty areas, as you all realize. So, just very briefly, in 1999, Denver Public Schools was sued by the Justice Department and some other individuals because they weren't giving proper support to predominantly Spanish-speaking kids who then were trying to become English-speaking kids. And so as a result, we have, we're ordered by the court, we have to offer kids who are identified as coming from Spanish-speaking homes, we have to either give them, classes mostly in Spanish as they transition to English, somewhat in English as they transition to full English or full English immersion. And this is a decision that, by federal order, the parent has to decide this. Now, this probably doesn't seem like a particularly important detail to some of you, but the reality of the situation is that Denver Public Schools is 45% identified English language learners. And so when we talk about the effects of No Child Left Behind and the impact of test scores, we have to take into consideration the fact that the test that governs whether we call a school failing or not is only given in English. And so because Denver is a very diverse city, We have kids that are English learners that are going to school with kids who are not necessarily English learners. And so, just to give you an indication, Kepner Middle School, just right up the street here, about 90, a little bit more than 90, almost 90% Latino, 60% of those kids are English learners. Those kids take the CSAP, and it's now called a TCAP. They now take it only in English. But in a school where 60% of the kids are not fluent enough in English to successfully take the TCAP, you can see what happens. And so one of the problems that we have in Southwest Denver is that we have a lot of schools with a lot of English learners who have to take these exams in English. And so consequently, the score comes back bad. I mean, if I'm taking a test in Mandarin Chinese, I don't speak it. I do speak some other languages, but not that one. I'm going to flunk the test. Or at least I'm going to probably not do very strong. And so that score has an impact on whether or not a school is quote-unquote failing. And yet, Colorado requires from each student, from K through 12, if you said that you spoke something different than English in your household, every year you have to take an English proficiency exam. That's called the CELA Pro. It's the Colorado English Language, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into all of that detail. So instead, what we're doing is that we're taking the portions of the CSAP. I'm going to refer to it as the CSAP, even though it's called something different now. The CSAP tests writing, reading, and math, right? So instead of substituting out the writing and the reading portions of that test in English, and substituting in the English proficiency exam, which also tests writing and reading, what we have created is a situation where public education is directly impacting the educational future of our kids. If you're not a Spanish speaker, and I know probably some of you don't have kids in the school system, but you are property taxpayers, and so, this is an investment that we've all made to make sure that we have a society that goes forward. It needs to matter to you that English learners are not being properly served. And it's primarily Spanish speakers, but it's also, we've also got Arabic speakers, of course, Vietnamese speakers, big time here in Southwest Denver. 5 different languages that we deal with in Denver Public Schools. So when you hear about all of the quote-unquote reforms that are going on, these reforms do not ever take into account the issues that we have with our English learners. We have many schools that do not comply with this federal court order. And yet, in the schools that we have that do comply with the federal court order and do provide English language learner support to transition to English, especially, just to give you an idea, our elementary school kids who are receiving the court-ordered support outscore even Anglo students on all of the CSAP scores.